Hello, it's Barry Coombs from ComputerWorld. Thank you for joining me. In this video, we're going to have a look at what to consider when upgrading your virtual infrastructure. And certainly a lot of our customers, this is a trend that we're seeing at the moment. But there's a lot of considerations. Obviously, the cloud is looming. And for most of our customers, their existing virtual infrastructure has been in place for maybe 5 or up to 10 years. So it will either be their first or their second refresh, with a large majority of customers kind of sweating those assets for between 3 to 5 years inside their data center. So we're going to go through a number of considerations when it's time to refresh your infrastructure, have a look at maybe how we can save some costs and what other options we should be considering with the cloud looming. But also what other technologies are now kind of in place inside data centers that actually might work inside your data center. So I'm just going to share my screen with you with a few important elements. I'll try and not make it death by PowerPoint. So what I just like to start by doing is have a look at how your data center has changed. It's obviously gone from physical to virtual. There's very, very few of our customers now that we're speaking with that have still got physical hardware in place. We probably reduced the total number of physical servers inside the data center, but we've increased the total number of servers between virtual and physical from where you used to be. And that's because of virtual machine sprawl. It's now very easy for us to be able to create new virtual machines. So what we do is we separate workloads and we create test and dev virtual machines, and we end up with a large amount more than we did have when they were physical. For some of my customers, maybe that's only 10%, but certainly up to 50% more in a lot of virtual infrastructures without the business really changing that much either. Simply because it is maybe better designed now, better architected, that the increase in virtual machines has been the right decision, or maybe it's just far too easy to right-click, create a new virtual machine. We've seen shared storage now grow inside all organizations. We had a very few customers that were utilizing shared storage for things like clustered technology with SQL or Exchange, but we've now seen shared storage become commonplace in every single data center, whether that's small to large. But hopefully we've also seen availability, backup and disaster recovery improved. One of the big advantages of virtualizing our servers was the fact that we were going from physical servers with a large amount of files installed straight on top of the bare metal to virtual servers running as files effectively on a hypervisor. It's so much easier now for us to be able to transport those, to move those, to back up and offer improved disaster recovery for our businesses. But how is your business changing? We're seeing now technology drive businesses, and certainly you will have all heard before about the Ubers and the Airbnbs utilizing technology at a small scale and embracing cloud technology to be able to differentiate themselves from their competition. And what we need to start understanding is, how does your business utilize technology? It's no longer just a supporting tool anymore. It is a critical element that the business now relies upon. What would happen if the technology wasn't available in your data center for a period of time? The users now demanding that applications are very quick and they're always available. Certainly any delay that slows down a user really isn't acceptable anymore. Some businesses will be concerned about the risk of data loss and cyber attack. And certainly if you're not, we've really all got to be aware of GDPR and the changes that will be happening in terms of fines that will be made available if you are seen to be losing personal data and you haven't put the right elements in place to be able to protect against that loss of data. And of course, we are seeing a big focus on cloud technologies. Businesses are now seeing this as a viable option for them to look at. And we need to understand likely what is going to remain on premises and what is going to go up to the cloud. Finally, I think another trend that we're seeing is users are utilizing their own devices, their mobile devices more and more, and our businesses need to embrace this new way of working. We may have tried to block users from bring your own device policies. However, they're now going out and via shadow IT using the applications that work for them inside their workflow. The industry is obviously changing as well. Cloud technologies are mainstream, but not maybe everyone is ready for a cloud migration yet. And personally, I don't think that all the technology is there for every single workload to move to the cloud seamlessly. Yes, you probably could move all of your servers to the cloud, but we need to consider availability. We need to consider how you need to re-architect those applications. And in my personal opinion, we're more likely to be moving to the cloud initially with things like software as a service and platform as a service when we're designing new applications, rather than dragging legacy servers up to the cloud in terms of infrastructure as a service. We are seeing Flash now being a lot cheaper and a lot more dense than ever before. And this is really driving a change in the way that we're able to deliver storage inside our data centers. The servers themselves have more cores than ever before and more dense RAM configurations. So we're able to utilize that in ways when looking to redesign your data center. And we're now seeing a further move from hardware to software. Obviously, we moved from physical servers to virtual machines. That was the first real software-based shift inside your data centers. But we're now seeing network virtualization and storage virtualization with things like hyperconverged technologies, changing the way that we're going to architect our data centers and really put us into a mindset ready for the cloud where it's all got to be software driven. So when considering upgrading your virtual infrastructure, many businesses are looking to cut costs. They're certainly not looking to spend what they spent last time when they virtualized their servers. Now, obviously, a really great thing, if this is only your first refresh, the amount of services, the amount of your time or professional services time that will be required to implement that new virtual infrastructure should be a lot less. It's easy to move virtual machines from one infrastructure to another infrastructure. We don't need to go through that arduous task that we did when we did physical to virtual migrations. We are also seeing the servers being higher performing, as I mentioned before. So maybe where you needed 5, 6, or 10 servers before, we might be able to reduce that by 1/3 or maybe up to a half inside your data center. We could also consider, is it a good time to move some of those workloads up to the cloud? We're seeing lots of our customers move test and dev or DR up to the cloud, implementing a software as a service policy. So any new systems that are coming in, we're looking to the cloud first. But when moving to the cloud, and if that is an element we want to do, we've got to make sure we don't just consider the CapEx cost, we also consider the OpEx cost. Those are the costs associated with running those virtual machines inside of our data center and also managing and maintaining them. We're also seeing the latest technologies reduce complexity with components such as hyperconverged technology and 10 gigabit networking to hopefully allow across the board us to be able to reduce the overall investment when you're looking to refresh your virtual infrastructure. But it can be a bit of a minefield looking at where you're going to start. How are we going to achieve this? And the first thing I like to ask is, do you actually know what is running inside your data center? And you'll be surprised with the amount of IT managers, directors, or even virtualization administrators that can give you a feel for it, but they don't truly know what is running in the data center. And I wholeheartedly believe that everybody should have a service catalog. Now, if I'm speaking to larger businesses, they've probably got a service catalog in place. Smaller to medium-sized businesses, there may be a service catalog, it might be out of date, or maybe this isn't something you've gone through. So we'll spend some time in a moment just having a look at a service catalog and how it may help you. And an important element of that service catalog is coming to an agreement on the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective. We need to consider how are we running test and development workloads? Are they taking up space on our production infrastructure? Is that going to continue in the new virtual infrastructure? Have we gone through a process of right-sizing our virtual infrastructure? And again, that's really important, so we're going to come to that a little bit later. But have we looked at the business? Have we looked at the business requirements? And do we know how it's going to grow? So what I would really advise you do is start by analysing and documenting your existing infrastructure so you truly know where you are today. So let's have a look at what we're going to do by creating a service catalogue. We need to document all of the services that IT deliver to the business. Now, I'm not talking about virtual machines. I'm not talking about physical servers. I'm talking about if I was to go and interview all of your staff and ask them what IT did for the business, what they delivered for the business, what would their answers be? As part of that, I want you to consider with each of those services how long the business would be able to manage without those services. And I'm not talking that figure that always gets plucked out of the air. Well, it can't be down. It can only have an hour's worth of downtime. I'm talking about figures that if we tipped over this edge and the service wasn't available for more than a week, our business would go bust. It would go out of business. Now, this isn't some goal that we're trying to aim for. Gosh, that would be awful. This is something that we're trying to document so it's clear what we need to be well inside of when we're looking at our DR and data protection strategy. We also need to have a look at what legislation is around keeping or retaining data inside of our businesses. For many people, that is up to 7 years if you're holding some kind of financial or personal data, or maybe even more if it's some kind of medical data. Maybe it's indefinitely. So we need to make sure we're considering that as well. So what I just wanted to flick to now is have a look at what a service catalog template looks like. And this is an example. By no means is this the best service catalog in the world. This is just a tribute. But what this sets out is it will give you an example of what a service catalog should look like. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, we can see that I've documented one of the services. That's email, a very important service that we're delivering to the business. I'm going to ignore the protection tier because we would get to that a little bit later. We're going to provide a clear description as to what the service is, no matter how simple it seems to be, and who the responsible people are. So whether that's people in the IT team or whether there is a user that is responsible for this application as well. In terms of well, if we have a look at the second one there, SharePoint, we actually have a sales manager that is responsible for that specific system. Who are the users? And these are the figures that I was talking around when will your business go bust if it doesn't have the data available, if it loses data, or it isn't online for a certain amount of time. So we've got the maximum tolerable downtime and the maximum tolerable data loss. We have a look at how long we need to retain the data, what the business impact if this service goes down, and then in this example here, I am then just relating that back to where it is running in the virtual infrastructure today. I've documented the software that is being utilized, the requirement in terms of have we got any specific requirements for the hardware. Maybe it needs a certain amount of inputs, outputs per second. Maybe it needs to only run on an environment that's PCI DSS signed off. In the example of the payment card industry, maybe there is some defined requirement that even if we're bringing that up in DR, it needs to be brought up in a secure place. And finally, don't forget what end user device requirements are there to be able to use that workload. It's all very well and good you moving workloads from A to B in the event of a disaster, but if the users are then logging onto another set of machines and the client to be able to connect that application is missing, it's not really worth it. So a copy of this template will be available. Have a look on the page where you've seen this video or down below in the comments, and we'll make a copy of this template available. But have a look at what other service catalog templates are available. Have a look at the ITIL standards, and importantly, just get a service catalog that works for you and your business. So we also, in terms of refreshing your virtual infrastructure and planning it, we need to understand the performance and capacity requirements for your virtual infrastructure. And a great place to start is by looking at the existing virtual infrastructure you have today. Have a look at maybe a 24-hour period. Have a look at what the metrics are showing you. Have a look maybe where there's some bottlenecks inside the environment. But maybe also have a look at over a longer period, maybe 7 days or 1 month, to really understand how hard you're pushing that virtual infrastructure. A large amount of virtual infrastructures will be allocated resource that they simply don't need. But typically when we do run these types of analysis, you'll see that there is a critical application that maybe a business has a problem with, and it's going to be something like the storage, the latency on the storage that is going to be causing issues. There's a wide variety of tools available. Again, have a look at the page that you've seen this video, or down in the comments below to have a look at some specific examples that we'd recommend. Typically, we will use something like the Dell DPAC tool. It's a free tool available to resellers like ComputerWorld that we can ask you to run, and we can then produce a large set of graphs, metrics to help you understand what's going on inside your virtual infrastructure and how you're going to plan for the future. But there are other tools available. You've probably already got some with the shared storage that you have inside your infrastructure for looking at storage metrics. Maybe you've got the VMware vCenter or Virtual Machine Manager in Hyper-V, or even Perfmon you can use to collect these statistics. There's just varying degrees of ease of use for collecting that data, and that's why we always jump to the Dell DPAC. We need to consider how much CPU is being utilized, how much RAM is being utilized, what IOPS are being consumed, what the latency is, how much bandwidth. And we also need to understand things like capacity, storage consumed, allocated, how much space is in DR and on our backup server. Now, what I would highly recommend when you do this is to create something where you can document some of these key figures. And I've just thrown together this spreadsheet. But having a spreadsheet like this with those metrics in place will really help you understand what's going on. And then when looking at a new infrastructure, give you a great place to just sanity check, have I met these technical requirements that are really needed? So I could easily go through and fill this in and have a look at all the key figures inside the environment. So I'm just documenting then the key elements, how many cores we've got, how many gigahertz, etc., etc. I'm not going to go through the list, but you can really see how that comes together. And don't forget to have a look at the amount of storage you have inside your environment, how much is utilized. This will just give you some really key metrics to help you understand, as I say, and plan going forward. So the other element that I looked at was how to right-size your environment. And it's very easy to configure your virtual machines inside your environment. I can almost guarantee any customer I go to that they've done this because it's very easy. When you've done that physical to virtual migration, have you then looked at the amount of CPU and RAM that was allocated to those virtual machines? In the physical world, don't forget you were trying to get sign off for a piece of hardware that had the most resource in it possible so you didn't hit any problems in the future. In the virtual world, we don't need to do that. We can allocate resource at a later date. So we need to make sure we right-size them. Also, if you're rolling out virtual machines from a template, do you go through that same process to make sure they are right-sized? And having a look at the manufacturer recommendations for software, they are almost always over-egged. So we need to have a look at how the virtual machines are configured. We need to have a look at the tools, again, those performance monitoring tools at an individual virtual machine basis, and then look to right-size that environment. If we can right-size, reduce the total amount of RAM, CPU, and disk allocated to each of these virtual machines, it makes it a lot easier for us to shrink that environment onto less physical hosts to make sure that we're then able to save money when we're looking to refresh that infrastructure, or importantly, move it to the cloud. The same principles will apply. So that is really good. Should we be looking at the cloud? What is your company's posture on the cloud today? What do you think? Do you have certain restrictions around data, where data is saved, where it is running, around governance? A lot of those problems now have been overcome. Certainly the likes of Azure are able to offer UK-based data centers, but maybe there are other things that you need to consider. Are there workloads that before you refresh that virtual infrastructure, you could move to the cloud? Office 365 is a fantastic example. Do you really need an Exchange server on premises still? Or actually, is it good time to move that up to the cloud as you're refreshing that virtual infrastructure? Maybe you've already moved some workloads up to the cloud, but you've not retired those virtual machines. Could those be archived off, backed up and saved in a specific way or stored somewhere so you have a copy of them, but do they need to be taking up space on your virtual infrastructure still? Maybe you've looked at Azure and AWS and they're not right for you. Maybe you have some issues around virtual machine, high availability in those particular infrastructures as they're running today. So maybe have a look at some more niche players like Island that are able to offer you a VMware-backed infrastructure as a service that gives you the high availability that you're used to today without having to re-architecture your applications. Whatever happens, whether it is the right time to move to the cloud or not, ensure you have a cloud strategy ready for your business. Ensure you have a way that you're looking to move to the cloud, to embrace the cloud, to get the advantages of the cloud. But importantly, make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure that you, when collecting a cloud service, you know what the availability criteria like how many nines it is, how it is sorting high availability, how it is sorting disaster recovery, where the data is located, who owns the data when you move your data from your data center to their data center. There are really, really important considerations that you should make that won't stop you move to the cloud, but it will help you make sure that you're doing it in a safe, secure, well-considered manner. So once we have gone through all of this, we're going to go back to our spreadsheet and we're going to adjust our spreadsheet to make sure that we've fully documented what we require moving forward, including important elements down here around growth inside our data center. So how much space do we need now and in the future inside the data center, and how much backup space and DR space do we need as well? Make sure critically that we document the business needs. Why are we doing this for the business? Where is the business going? What is going to happen in the future? And are we implementing an infrastructure that is going to keep up with those business needs? We need to document the data protection requirements and ensure that we sanity check those needs are met at every single stage. So as we're going through a process, maybe working with some partners like ComputerWorld, are we ticking those boxes? Do we meet the requirements that you are setting out? And then I suppose really importantly, and this sounds silly, how many people have I worked with that have purchased a SAN because it has great snapshot capability, has the ability to replicate data from A to B, but actually when they've got it in, when they've installed it, they've not implemented those important functionalities. So it's important to consider that and look where you go forward. So let's take a kind of step forward now and have a look at some of the technologies that are available and what's changing in the data center technology. Hopefully you found the last section useful, so you make sure you've got a fully documented requirement ready to start considering how we architect a redesigned, upgraded solution for your data center. So we've got a traditional virtual infrastructure documented on screen here. We can see we've got a number of virtual hosts. In the example, these are ESXi. They're obviously going to be being managed by a virtual center. We have a number of virtual machines on there. We have the core network, a storage network, and some shared storage. This is going to be typical of what you probably have in your data center today. Obviously, we've got built into this high availability. So if we lose one of those hosts, the virtual machines will obviously go down as well, but they're able to be rebooted quickly and easily on the remaining hosts inside the environment. So a really important aspect when we were designing this was to design it with an N+1 design and an N+1 design. What that meant ultimately is that if you lose one host, the remaining workloads are able to boot without the environment being constrained. Now, if we have a look at what the benefits were when we did this migration, we were able to increase the availability. High availability was quick and easy to implement. In the physical world, we had to implement clustering, which was a lot more complex and a lot more costly, to be honest with you. We were able to remove those silos from the physical server world where we had buckets of storage and capacity, RAM and CPU, that we could only use on those physical servers. We were unable to move workloads around. It was relatively easy to grow. In the virtual infrastructure, we can simply add some servers, add shelves to the SAN, but maybe it wasn't as flexible as it fully could be. And even with the shared SANs, we still had integration with vCenter or Virtual Machine Manager to allow you to quickly and easily manage it. But there are a number of disadvantages that we can have. Certainly, going back to a lot of the older technologies like the HP EVA, the big EMC Clarion arrays and things like that, they could be very complex. You have to have dedicated storage teams managing them or send someone on a training course. We've been able to overcome that more recently with technology, certainly going back as far as Equilogic or Nimble storage that are actually quite easy to use. We had to choose the right SAN though. So typically the SAN that we chose, that we bought, had to be able to meet our needs for 3 to 5 years. Not really from a capacity perspective, but maybe from a bandwidth perspective, or how powerful the controllers were, or how much cache there was. Otherwise, we had to go through certain upgrades. Those upgrades may require you to rip and replace the old SAN with a new SAN. And we were still very reliant on the functionality on those shared storage devices to be able to deliver us key metrics around performance, availability, replication. So it wasn't fully integrated at a software layer. So things are changing and we're moving to this world of the software-defined data center. The software-defined data center is made up of 4 key components: management and automation at the top, then compute, network, and storage. This is very familiar to that kind of physical data center that we looked at a minute ago, where we had it separated. But the important element is software controls each and every single one of these without the reliance of a specific piece of hardware to be able to run any one given one of those given elements. So this is where hyperconverged infrastructure has come from, and that's the example we've now got on screen. So as you can see, we've managed to get rid of the storage network and get rid of the dedicated storage behind it. And the disks have now come back into the servers. But the way that it utilizes it, the way that it is configured, the way that it is presented as one SAN across all of the hosts inside your data center. So the virtual machines can quickly and easily be created upon that shared SAN, that virtual SAN, and they can move from one virtual machine to another. So we've removed that restriction we had in the physical world of silos where data could be. Now, the same applies if we lose one of these virtual servers, even though the data, sorry, virtualization host, even though the data is on these disks, there are copies of that data available on the remaining hosts inside the clusters. So those virtual machines will obviously go down, but they will also be able to be booted up inside the data center as well. So if we go back and have a look at how would we consider upgrading this, what options have we got? We said in the physical world we'd have to add another shelf to the SAN, maybe replace the SAN, add more hosts. Well, we've got a lot of flexibility in the hyperconverged infrastructure. So we could add some more disks into the servers inside the infrastructure. It's really important that when you choose what servers you're going to be used for the hyperconverged infrastructure, consider your likely need to be able to upgrade in the future. You don't want to put a single 1U server in there with a small amount of disks and not then look at the ability to be able to upgrade in the future. If you use a 2U server, something like a R730 or 740 XD from Dell, you're then able to add additional disk groups in the future. But we're also able to add additional servers with or without additional disks to further expand this, so we can scale as we grow that virtual infrastructure. So there's some really important elements there that when considering a hyperconverged infrastructure we must take into consideration. But because this is all software defined, because you are creating the SAN at the software level, because there are policies configuring where the virtual machines are, what the data protection needs to be for them, how many copies of the data, it's all fully integrated at the software layer. So there are a number of different benefits. As we've already mentioned, we can scale as we grow, add disks, we can add nodes. We can also do it across many different hardware manufacturers dependent upon the solution. We can increase performance because this is importantly available as hybrid, where we've got SSDs available as a cache and then spinning disks available for capacity, or flash configurations with deduplication available across the board. We're also able to maybe improve security with things like encryption being baked in. It's very quick and very easy to do that because we're utilizing the x86 hardware and the software to be able to do that. It's more simple. We no longer need a dedicated storage appliance. It's managed from inside something like the vCenter, so we can, our virtualization administrators or even our storage administrators can get to the point where they can manage and maintain it quickly and easily. All of the management is fully integrated with the hypervisor. And typically, because we don't need that dedicated storage appliance, dedicated network, and we're able to make use of the latest hardware technologies, we're able to save costs. There are still some disadvantages, and I believe, and I will get shot down by some people in the industry, that hyperconverged still isn't for everyone today. So certainly if you're a smaller business, typically you will have a free node starting point for most of the kind of fully fledged solutions that will allow you to grow easily thereon in the future. That may be kind of a step too far for you. If you're really, you could get away with one host, but for availability you have two. That doesn't necessarily stop you. There are remote office, branch office solutions available that you can do with two nodes. Maybe if you're looking to do a staged implementation, so last year you bought a load of new servers and it's only the storage that needs refreshing, it might not be the right solution available for you now. And maybe if you look at it, the cost isn't there against a very cheap SAN array. The important element is the software-defined data center needs to be flexible. A lot of the functionality and features that will be important to you will be available for you from a choice of different technologies. And what is important is that you're meeting your own criteria and choosing the technology that's going to work for you, not just moving towards the latest and greatest trend, because that's what the industry is showing you. Now, there are a wide range of hyperconverged solutions available, and Dell has probably the largest breadth in products available in their portfolio. So off the top of my head, these are the 4 solutions I chose to pick upon. Dell, in fact, do have more, but we've got the VMware vSAN solution that are available in a number of different ways, which we'll come back to in a moment. We've got the Dell EMC VxRail solution, which is a fully packaged solution. Microsoft storage spaces available as Windows Server 2016, and then the Dell EMC XC range, which is powered by Nutanix. Now, there are a number of different advantages from these solutions, and there will be a solution that's right for you inside of here. They all utilize Dell x86 servers to be able to provide the compute. So you're used to the levels of availability, the resilience that are available in them, the ease of use that's available to them. The VMware vSAN solution can be configured in a number of different ways. You can pick the components off a hardware compatibility list and build your own. You can go to Dell EMC and have a look at a vSAN ready node. That's a node that has been pre-configured with components that Dell has fully tested to work with VMware vSAN, and that will be fully supported end-to-end by Dell as a VMware vSAN configuration. And then finally, we have the VxRail, which is a fully predefined appliance that has hardware, but also added value software available to it that makes it even quicker and even easier to deploy inside your data center. And it will even auto deploy further nodes that you add in the future to make it that much quicker to be able to run new workloads. Now, if Hyper-V is your thing, and you're looking actually, how can I run this hyperconverged infrastructure inside Hyper-V, then have a look at storage spaces as part of 2016, particularly storage spaces direct that were integrated with 2016 that offers you a number of different configuration options. Or alternatively, you could look at the hypervisor agnostic Dell EMC XC powered by Nutanix that will allow you to choose whichever hypervisor you want, whether that's vSphere, whether that's Hyper-V, or whether that's their own hypervisor that they also have available. That gives you the true availability of not having to worry about which of the hypervisors you want to use. So as you can see, there is a wealth of hyperconverged solutions available. These are just a flavor of those available from Dell. And the important aspect is to go back to your list, understand these technologies and which ones are the right ones for you to look at, make sure you're ticking the boxes, get some hands-on time with them, and then make that decision moving forward. And then finally, once we've chosen the hardware, once we've specified it, don't forget you've got to have a look at your data protection strategy. Have a look at if you've got a 3-2-1 backup strategy, at least 3 copies of your data on at least 2 different mediums with at least 1 copy held off-site. Now, there are a number of different technologies available in those solutions we've just looked at that you can consider to help you. So whether that's SAN-based snapshotting or snapshotting at the hypervisor layer, if configured correctly, whether that's replicas of virtual machine running from one data center to another data center, whether that's backups, and whether those backups or whether those replicas actually should go to your data center or should go up to the cloud. We're seeing a large amount of our customers do that now, certainly with our chosen partner, iland, where we're able to take a copy of that data on site, use the snapshotting technology, but then get a copy off site with a variety of technologies, allowing us to either consistently trickle data up there for a minimal recovery point objective and a minimal RTO, to just replicating up once a day so we can recover the data as and when we need it. We're also able to consider other third-party options as well to maybe recover the data or send the data off to the cloud, such as StorageCraft, if you've got maybe a smaller solution or a minimal solution that you want to be able to replicate the data somewhere else. Always remember to look back at that data protection, at your service catalog, and try, when you look at that service catalog, to implement a tiered protection strategy. So, you know, if it's a gold level virtual machine, the RPO and the RTO is this, and this is how we are going to meet it. Silver and bronze and so off. but we need to go far past just the technical considerations and make sure we're fully working with the business to understand the user's needs and the business needs in the event of a disaster. So we've gone through a large amount of subjects there. I hope you found it useful. This is really just supposed to be thought-provoking. So when you're ready to be refreshing that virtual infrastructure, you can consider, what are the important aspects to me? What are the important aspects to the business? How do I make sure that I get it right and we're able to grow in the future? And equally, I don't buy too much up front. It's so easy for us now to expand when we need it, that we should be able to right-size the virtual machines, fin provision the storage, only allocate what we need when we need it. And then we can look at the new technologies available to us. So whether a traditional virtual infrastructure is the right thing for you today, or whether it's hyper-converged, or maybe it's time to move some of those workloads up to the cloud. So have a look down in the comments below, or have a look at the page that you're on. There are a number of different resources that were available. We will make available the service catalog so you can document or see if this is a service catalog that's going to work for you. I will also make my very quick calculator available just to document your virtual infrastructure. And we'll also put some further information about the VMware vSAN and the VxRail solutions, as well as the other hyperconverged solutions on the page you're on or via the link in the video below. So thank you very much for watching. Head over to computerworld.co.uk for more information.